The students of Canterlot High were enjoying themselves at Camp Everfree. They had just finished a campfire and now were asleep in their tents. Twilight's head barely touched the pillow when she heard a strange sound. It was the sound of someone whistling a tune. Twilight was confused. Everyone had just fallen asleep. Who could be whistling at 1 in the morning? The tune sounded beautiful, like it was "Oh Susanna" or "She'll Be Coming Round the Mountain." Twilight got out of bed, changed into her camping uniform, and went to see where the noise was coming from. But when she peeped out of the tent, she gasped. There was no one outside on the campgrounds, yet she could clearly hear whistling. Twilight wasn't just confused, she was scared as well. She felt it was best to stay in the tent. "Can you hear that?" whispered a voice. Twilight looked back to see Sunset Shimmer, who had already changed into her camping uniform. Yes, said Twilight, studying. "But I don't see anyone at the camp. It doesn't make sense. Why would anyone be up so late?" Twilight peeped her head outside the tent and pointed to where the whistling was coming from. "It's coming from over there," whispered Twilight. Sunset peeped her head outside the tent to see where Twilight was pointing at. The whistling was coming from the rock quarry, where they both discovered equestrian magic that gave them their magic geos. "Why would anyone be snooping around the rock quarry for?" said Twilight. "I don't know, but I'm gonna find out." "Twilight, get your geo," replied Sunset. "What? Sunset, you know we're forbidden to leave the tent at night. What if someone catches us?" cried Twilight. "Yes, Twilight, I know. But I think someone could be in danger and is whistling to sound brave. We could help by showing him or her the right path," said Sunset. "But what if he or she's not in danger? What if he or she's dangerous? What do we do?" questioned Twilight. "If he or she's dangerous, then we run back and make sure we don't get caught," Sunset replied. "You coming?" she asked. Twilight groaned. She wasn't the type of egghead to break school rules, but agreed to go with Sunset. They followed the whistling through the woods and arrived at the rock quarry. There, standing in front of them, was the entrance to where they found the geos and made a charity party to save Camp Everfree. But the whistling wasn't heard from that entrance. It was heard on the right side of the quarry. "We must be getting close," said Sunset. "Sunset, please, let's get out of here. This is creepy, and I don't want to get into trouble," replied Twilight worriedly. "Twilight, calm down," said Sunset again. "I understand that this would freak you out, but I believe we can help this person. And if we get into trouble, I'll admit it's my fault. Please trust me." "Okay, Sunset, but I still don't like where this is going," agreed Twilight. Sunset and Twilight walked over to the right. As the whistling got closer, they could make out an echo like it was coming from another cave. When they arrived, they were in for a surprise. The whistling was coming from inside a mine entrance. The entrance to the mine had a narrow-gauge railroad line and some derailed mine cars. There were also some old buildings that haven't been touched for years. Sunset was amazed at what she discovered. Twilight was also amazed, but still she didn't want to stay here for long. They were just at the mine entrance when suddenly the whistling stopped. Twilight and Sunset peeped their heads into the mine, listening for more whistling, but none ever came. Just as they felt they should go back to the camp, they heard the sound of heavy footsteps on the grass. They turned to see a man in his 50s staring at them and looking annoyed. "Evening, you two. I doubt you ever noticed this, but this is private property," said the man. The two girls were surprised. "Oh, sorry about this," apologized Sunset. "We just wanted to know where all that whistling was coming from." The man stared at them in shock. "Whistling? Did you hear it from that mine entrance?" said the man. "Well, yes," agreed Twilight, but I think you two should go back to where you're from," answered the man. "This mine is a home to one of my old friends, and he doesn't take too kindly to strangers." The two girls were surprised at what the man said. "Well, who is your friend anyway?" asked Sunset. The man gave Sunset a grim look on his face. "I'd rather not tell you who he is. It would be a bit unpleasant. So please take my advice and go home." The man slowly swung around and walked away into the night. Sunset and Twilight watched until they couldn't see him. The two girls looked at each other. Twilight finally spoke. "I don't know what that man is talking about," she said. "But whatever he said, I think we should go." "Maybe you're right, Twilight," agreed Sunset. "Perhaps the stranger might be dangerous. Let's go back." Before they had the chance to go back, they heard an unknown voice. "Help me, please!" Sunset and Twilight looked at each other in fear, and what they heard wasn't in their mind. It was heard in the entrance. They peeped their heads inside and looked around. It was pitch black. Not a single light from the moon would be any use. "Maybe you're right, Sunset," said Twilight. "Perhaps someone is in danger. We should go see." "But you heard what the man said," replied Sunset. "We're not allowed in. His friend might be dangerous." "Sunset, someone's life is in trouble," said Twilight. "You said it yourself. We should help he or her." Sunset frowned but agreed. "All right, Twilight. I'll come. I can't leave you to do this alone." The two girls stepped into the mine. Sunset shined her phone's light while Twilight shined her emergency flashlight, and the two ventured into the mine. Sunset and Twilight walked further into the mine until they took a sharp left at the entrance. Fortunately, Twilight also has a compass, and it was pointing west, so the only way back to the entrance was east. "Anyone help? I'm wounded!" Another voice was heard calling for help inside the mine, meaning there were two people. Sunset quickly called out, Just hold on, we're coming! But there was no answer. Sunset took a step forward when... Twilight screamed in horror. Sunset ran over to her. Twilight, what's wrong? You look at me. Oh, sweet Celestia! Sunset cried as she saw what Twilight's flashlight was pointing at. On the ground was a puddle of blood. In fact, there was a trail of it. Sunset felt like throwing up, but she didn't dare in case someone might be near her. Who would ever do this? Asked Twilight in shock. I don't know. I don't want to know. But we need to rescue those men, no matter if this blood trail makes us sick. Twilight agreed, so they continued on, avoiding the puddles as they walked. They had only taken a few minutes of walking when they heard a new voice. Help! Help! I'm hurt! Get up! We're getting close, said Twilight to Sunset, and she was right. Sunset flashed her phone light around the cave wall when something caught her eye. She moved her phone light at what looked like a hand. As she could make it out, it was a hand. A plain, normal hand. Sunset sighed in relief, knowing they've arrived. Don't worry, we're here. Just please explain what's hurting you, said Sunset. But the hand didn't even move, nor a word blurted out from the person whose hand was attached to. Sunset was about to speak when Twilight screamed in horror again. Ah! Sunset turned to Twilight and gasped at what Twilight flashed her light onto. What Twilight's emergency flashlight was pointing at was a corpse of a man. Parts of its flesh was rotting away, and blood drying out with flies swarming around. Sticking in its eye socket was a pickaxe. Sunset flashed her phone light back at the hand and realized she was talking to another dead corpse with a pickaxe in its chest. The two girls flashed their lights around. There in the mine were multiple dead corpses sprawled out or hanging against the wall, pinned by a pickaxe on one part of its body. Who in Celestia's name did this? Cried Sunset. I don't know, but Before Twilight could finish her sentence, they both heard something they recognized. It was the whistling, the same tune of "Oh Susanna, where she'll be coming round the mountain." As the whistling grew closer, the two girls could make out the silhouette of a man in his 20s. He wore a mining uniform and was holding a pickaxe in his hand. But what was creepy about him was his grin. It was stretched out and gave the girls a creepy feeling. Hello. And what are you doing on my property? Asked the man. Sunset and Twilight stared at the man in fear. They had a bad feeling that this man could be a psycho. Your property? Asked Twilight. You mean? You're a monster! Yelled Sunset. Why would you ever do this? The man slowly raised his pickaxe, as if he was aiming at the wall of the mine. He began to giggle. I'm no monster. These corpses are the monsters, the man said. They've done something I'll never explain. It led me to this. I rule this mine ever since those men betrayed me and my old friend. And whoever enters, my resting place becomes a memory. And guess what? You're next! The man's giggles began to change to enraged laughter. Sunset and Twilight looked at each other. They knew they were in big trouble now. Sunset, run! Cried Twilight. The two girls sprinted back the way they came, all the way out the entrance, but the man had other ideas. He sprinted after them with his pickaxe raised higher, ready to slaughter them, while laughing insanely. Sunset and Twilight continued running until they turned a sharp right, and there in front of them was the entrance. Hurry, Twilight! Cried Sunset in fear. The two girls finally sprinted out of the mine. They both knew that insane man would eventually find them. Quickly, they hid behind an old hut and waited until it was safe for them. They soon heard him outside the mine and was whistling that tune again. Twilight and Sunset's eyes widened as the whistling grew closer to them. They felt that this would be it. He found them, and they would be like the corpses in the mine. As they braced themselves, making their final thoughts and ready to accept fate, the whistling stopped, and they heard his footsteps fainter and fainter as he walked back into the mine. The two girls breathed a sigh of relief. What are you two beyond my hut? Said a voice. Sunset and Twilight jumped as they saw the same man they met before they went into the mine. He wasn't very pleased to see them. I told you girls to go back home, but you ignored me, he said. We're very sorry we ignored your advice, said Sunset. We heard a voice calling for help in the mine and... Wait, interrupted the man. You went into the mine. You met my old friend. Twilight and Sunset looked at the man. Can you please tell us about your friend and why he committed murder? Asked Twilight. The man stared at them with an expression of fear and sadness, but agreed that they must know. Very well, he said. I'll tell you. He took a deep breath and began. I was once a miner at this quarry since 1965. My job was digging away some of the rock so other companies could use this for building materials. My friend worked with me whenever the shift was too much for me to do alone. His name was Pickaxe Smacker. He was a hard worker at that mine, and he and I were very close together as friends. He always enjoys whistling while he works. His favorites were Oh Susanna and She'll Be Coming Round the Mountain. We did our work with determination, and the manager of the quarry awarded us with extra pay and would congratulate us for our hard work. But because of our determination, 5 of the other miners were jealous. These miners were slackers. All they do is put little effort in their work and would mostly smoke tobacco all day. Whenever we try to talk sense into them, all they do is tell us to scamp off. Whenever we get congratulated, they curse at us or shove us on the ground so they would want to fight us. Thankfully, the manager helped put a stop to that. and threatened that he would fire them if they don't act like us. But one day, the jealous miners went too far. One early morning, Pickaxe and I arrived as usual to start work. We were surprised to see those miners early, but weren't suspicious. We decided it was best to start work, then ask any of them. I would have saved my friend if we were suspicious. Sunset and Twilight looked at the former miner. They were both shocked and curious at the same time. "What happened in there?" asked Twilight. The former miner sighed as he continued. "Me and Pickaxe were digging right by a ledge in the mine, and those 5 jealous idiots were plotting a plan to notice this. Me and Pickaxe were about to start work when one of the miners smacked Pickaxe with a shovel. I cried in horror to see Pickaxe lying there. Those 5 miners laughed, which made me infuriated. I charged at them, beating one of them on the ground, telling him what I think. The others joined to attack me. When one of the miners shoved me, I bumped into someone, and I realized it was Pickaxe. The force of the shove pushed him out of control, and he slipped over the edge. I tried to rescue him, but I was too late. Pickaxe fell off the ledge, all the way to the bottom. The wet crunch came after. I stared at where he fell, tears beginning to well up in my eyes. The other miners were about to abandon me, but the manager, who usually came to check on us in the mine, heard the commotion inside and asked about what the fuss was. The miners tried to make any excuse that it was my fault, but I spoke the truth. The manager was furious. He reported this to the police. The police arrested those miners and forced extra work for them in the mines as community service. Sunset and Twilight were horrified at what they just heard. However, since those thugs' community service, strange things were surfacing, began the former miner. As the 5 thugs went to the mine, they started screaming and calling for help. At first, the manager and I didn't believe them and thought they were plotting a way to escape community service. But to our surprise, some of the miners who aren't jealous ran out. Only a few. They began screaming and telling there was murder inside. The manager and I went to investigate, and what we saw was exactly what you two saw in there. Blood everywhere, and corpses of some of the miners, especially those 5 thugs that killed Pickaxe. The manager and I were feeling sick already. Who could have done this, we thought. Suddenly we heard someone whistling, and the silhouette of a man grew closer into our light. We saw him, Pickaxe Smacker. We were astonished to see him, but in his hand made us nervous. In his hand was a pickaxe covered in blood. We both looked at Pickaxe and his blood-covered pickaxe. I said to him, "Pickaxe, is that you? I thought you were dead." Pickaxe responded, and what he said still haunts me to this day. "I am dead. Ever since those miners caused me to fall, I felt like my hard work was wasted. However, I made a deal with the devil to keep me working, if only to bring more souls to my life. And guess what? You're next!" The manager and I realized Pickaxe was going to reap us like the Grim Reaper, and quickly we sprinted for the way out. But Pickaxe wasn't going to let us go. The manager sprinted away faster than I could. I couldn't catch up, and I felt Pickaxe charging closer and closer. The manager did something I would never forget. Just as we got close to the exit, I tripped on a stone and realized Pickaxe was charging towards me. Just as I thought I was finished, the manager rushed in front of me and told me to run. I couldn't ask any questions as I saw the manager dragged away by Pickaxe screaming. I raced out of the mine alive and unharmed. Looking back, I never saw the manager again. All the other miners refused to go anywhere near that section of the mine, and so it was cut off from the quarry. I quit my job and worked as a paper boy in the old village, but somehow I decided to buy the land that was haunted and live in this hut for the rest of my life. The 2 girls were amazed at what the manager did to save the former miner's life. But why live there if it's haunted? Asked Sunset. I decided to live at the abandoned place because it felt right for me to stop my old friend hurting people and to pay tribute to the manager that saved my life. So many people ignore my warnings, and either dead or lucky. I've been doing this every night, so I don't have to see anyone suffer Pickaxe's wrath or listening to his whistling. Since 1965, on every night on that day, Pickaxe and those miners return to repeat the same thing. The miners are always crying for help, and Pickaxe is always looking for his next victim, said the former miner. Twilight and Sunset now felt sympathetic for the former miner, but they soon noticed that the sun was starting to rise. "We better hurry back," said Twilight to Sunset. "Everyone at Camp Everfree would be awake soon." "You're right, Twilight," said Sunset. "Thank you for telling us about your friend Pickaxe. We're very sorry to hear this and ignore your warning." "It's all right," said the former miner. "And I'm sorry you went through all this. You better head back." With that, Twilight and Sunset raced back through the forest, back to Camp Everfree. By the time they came back to their tent, they were tired, and all the other students were waking up. "All right, students," said Principal Celestia. "Today is our last day at Camp Everfree, so please pack everything and make sure you don't leave anything behind." Twilight and Sunset's friends, Fluttershy, Applejack, Rarity, Rainbow Dash, and Pinkie Pie, came over to them. "Well," said Applejack, "I'm sure gonna miss this place. We had one of the best moments of life so far." "Indeed, darling," said Rarity. "We've saved a precious memory for next generation and had the best party of..." "Goodness, darlings, what happened to you two?" Sunset yawned, feeling drowsy due to the lack of sleep and the experience in the mine, but agreed to answer Rarity's question. "Can you keep a secret?" she asked. "Totally," said Rainbow. "We'll tell you in our tent," replied Twilight. Twilight and Sunset told the girls about the whistling, the former miner, the cries for help, the old mine by the rock quarry, and of course, Pickaxe Smacker. The girls were horrified. "Now why in tarnation would you go into a place only to find a ghost that would kill you?" cried Applejack. "It's really my fault," said Sunset. "Since I am still learning about friendship, it felt right for me to help someone. But now I understand that sometimes they would use it to lure you in a trap." What else did the old miner say?" asked Fluttershy. "He said that he wished to keep people out of the mine to prevent Pickaxe from slaughtering them," said Twilight. "If there was a way to seal that entrance..." The girls looked at Twilight and Sunset and sighed. "There are times that some things are left untouched," agreed Applejack. "Don't worry. I can tell you two had quite an experience, so we'll help you pack." After the girls had finished packing Twilight and Sunset's camping gear and uniform as well as theirs, they said goodbye to Gloriosa Daisy and Timber Spruce before boarding the school bus. Twilight stared back at the rock quarry with a sad look on her face. She was still thinking about how to seal the entrance. Just as she thought there was no way, she spotted a large boulder on the top of the quarry, just large enough to block a cave. She thought it was a perfect way to seal it. Before the bus started, Twilight opened a window, and carefully using her magic from her Geo, she dislodged some rocks so the boulder could fall on its target. Meanwhile, the former miner was outside the mine staring at the entrance. Suddenly, he heard some rocks falling on top of the mine. He looked up to see a boulder coming right down. Quickly, jumped out of the way just as the boulder smashed to the ground, and when the dust settled, the former miner saw that the boulder sealed the entrance. He looked at the boulder and at the direction where Sunset and Twilight left. He smiled for the first time. His wish had been granted. Twilight smiled too. She didn't tell anyone that she dislodged the boulder. It was better not to, as everyone was curious on why the boulder dislodged, and asked Gloriosa or Timber if they are okay. As the bus pulled out of Camp Everfree, Twilight closed her eyes and went to sleep. She started to think it was best to forget that mine. What happened to her and Sunset didn't matter anymore. They were alive and would live a perfect life. However, whenever Twilight or Sunset are asleep, they hear whistling like, "Oh Susanna," or "She'll be coming round the mountain." And to them they swear they hear the sound of giggling from outside. They're too afraid to find out who it belonged.